Hello, everybody. We're here for the second class of Brainy Talks. I know that I said that the talks were going to alternate with the books, and the subject of the talks would somehow be related to the books. Well, this is related to everything in life, so it's related to the books, but this is a class that I really wanted to do. I have to make a confession about this class. I think it's one of the most valuable I have ever done, because the subject of it is creativity. And I'm not talking about our own personal creativity alone, but just in answer to the questions of how do we actually get through life? How do you face depression? How do you face really hard times? How do you cope with things that are very, very, very difficult? My answer is, and I have an answer, of course. My answer is creativity. By that, I do not mean that you go out and take painting lessons or that you learn to dance. That would be nice, that would be good. But I mean that we all have access to creativity through other people who are creative. And with the internet, of course, we have it it's unlimited. Prior to this time, maybe we had to go to a concert hall. Maybe we had to go to a theater to see a play, had to go to a theater to see a movie. I mean, now it's even so easy, and that was the basis of this whole class, to make you familiar with all the podcasts and everything available on YouTube. So let us just think about that. I've selected such a choice for you. I could keep you busy for weeks and weeks with what you're getting when you finish the class and you scroll down and you have all the references. So we're talking about the arts. We're going to see an example of painting.
What you do in life chooses you. You can choose not to do it. You can choose to try to do something safer. Your vocation chooses you. When I really started painting a lot, I had become so obsessed that there was nowhere to move in my home. Paintings were everywhere. They were becoming a part of the furniture. I was eating on them. I found myself looking around at one point in a really bleak winter in New York, and it was just so depressing, and I think I needed color.
It's getting kind of pedestrian to me now, the teal. You know what I'd like to do is just start threading in some purple, into these things. I'll find the ultimate color and I'll be able to reproduce it.
You can tell what I love by the color of the paintings. You can tell my inner life by the darkness in some of them, and you can tell what I want from the brightness in some of them.
It's 5 a.m., so I'm making a little more progress now. It's really kind of cool what happens with these things, because you really don't know what a sculpture or a painting totally means. You think you do. Most of the time I start out with a plan, and then, like a year later, I'll realize that the painting was telling me what I needed to know about myself a year before.
This is surely one of the most remarkable gifts that our species has, that we can draw pictures, make pictures. We've passed on our history first through art. This began when we were cavemen. We've all seen they couldn't help but start reproducing their lives on the walls, and we've gone from there. But there are also other things that have been around for a long time. Music is another. They have found records in Africa of drum beats, rhythm. So, this is a natural companion to man to go through his life. Then we move on to using your hands, actually making something with your hands. Some of us in a very, I call it a primitive way, but using your hands to cook. We're going to see an example of a woman who really uses her hands.
This story is about taking imagination seriously. 14 years ago, I first encountered this ordinary material, fishnet, used the same way for centuries. Today, I'm using it to create permanent, billowing, voluptuous forms, the scale of hard-edged buildings in cities around the world. I was an unlikely person to be doing this. I never studied sculpture, engineering, or architecture. In fact, after college, I applied to 7 art schools and was rejected by all 7. I went off on my own to become an artist, and I painted for 10 years when I was offered a Fulbright to India. Promising to give exhibitions of paintings, I shipped my paints and arrived in Mahabalipuram. The deadline for the show arrived. My paints didn't. I had to do something. This fishing village was famous for sculpture, so I tried bronze casting. But to make large forms was too heavy and expensive. I went for a walk on the beach, watching the fishermen bundle their nets into mounds on the sand. I'd seen it every day, but this time I saw it differently. A new approach to sculpture, a way to make volumetric form without heavy, solid materials. My first satisfying sculpture was made in collaboration with these fishermen. It's a self-portrait titled Wide Hips. We hoisted them on poles to photograph. I discovered their soft surfaces revealed every ripple of wind in constantly changing patterns. I was mesmerized. I continued studying craft traditions and collaborating with artisans, next in Lithuania with lace makers. I liked the fine detail it gave my work, but I wanted to make them larger, to shift from being an object you look at to something you could get lost in. Returning to India to work with those fishermen, we made a net of 1.5 million hand-tied knots. Installed briefly in Madrid, thousands of people saw it, and one of them was the urbanist Manuel Sola Morales, who was redesigning the waterfront in Porto, Portugal. He asked if I could build this as a permanent piece for the city. I didn't know if I could do that and preserve my art. Durable, engineered, permanent, those are in opposition to idiosyncratic, delicate, and ephemeral. For 2 years, I searched for a fiber that could survive ultraviolet rays, salt air, pollution, and at the same time remain soft enough to move fluidly in the wind. We needed something to hold the net up out there in the middle of the traffic circle. So we raised this 45,000-pound steel ring. We had to engineer it to move gracefully in an average breeze and survive in hurricane winds. But there was no engineering software to model something porous and moving. I found a brilliant aeronautical engineer who designed sails for America's Cup racing yachts named Peter Heppel. He helped me tackle the twin challenges of precise shape and gentle movement. I couldn't build this the way I knew because hand-tied knots weren't going to withstand a hurricane. So I developed a relationship with an industrial fishnet factory, learned the variables of their machines, and figured out a way to make lace with them. There was no language to translate this ancient, idiosyncratic handcraft into something machine operators could produce. So we had to create one. 3 years and 2 children later, we raised this 50,000 square foot lace net. It was hard to believe that what I had imagined was now built, permanent, and had lost nothing in translation. This intersection had been bland and anonymous. Now it had a sense of place. I walked underneath it for the first time. As I watched the wind's choreography unfold, I felt sheltered and at the same time connected to limitless sky. My life was not going to be the same. I want to create these oases of sculpture in spaces of cities around the world. I'm going to share 2 directions that are new in my work. Historic Philadelphia City Hall. Its plaza, I felt, needed a material for sculpture that was lighter than netting. So we experimented with tiny atomized water particles to create a dry mist that is shaped by the wind. And in testing, discovered it can be shaped by people who can interact and move through it without getting wet. I'm using this sculpture material to trace the paths of subway trains above ground in real time, like an X-ray of the city's circulatory system unfolding. Next challenge, the Biennial of the Americas in Denver asked, could I represent the 35 nations of the Western Hemisphere and their interconnectedness in a sculpture? I didn't know where to begin, but I said yes. I read about the recent earthquake in Chile and the tsunami that rippled across the entire Pacific Ocean. It shifted the Earth's tectonic plates, sped up the planet's rotation, and literally shortened the length of the day. So I contacted NOAA, and I asked if they'd share their data on the tsunami, and translated it into this. Its title, 1.26, refers to the number of microseconds that the Earth's day was shortened. I couldn't build this with a steel ring the way I knew. Its shape was too complex now. So I replaced the metal armature with a soft, fine mesh of a fiber 15 times stronger than steel.
One of my favorite writers, poets, is Raymond Carver. If you've taken my classes, you know that. He wrote some beautiful poetry, and one of his books he titled, the title of the book is A New Way to the Waterfall. And it's a phrase that I always keep in my head, remind myself of. The point being, of course, the waterfall's always there, but we can all find new ways to get there. And as we age, sometimes we have to switch it around, and little kids too. So you can always find a new way to the waterfall. You know, that's why I'm always pushing poetry so much, because most people reject it when they're kids in school. I understand this. But as we get older and we understand the power of language, poetry is something that can be very, very helpful to people. And it is something that I feel also can be used when you're trying to cope with some really tough stuff.
I created a poetry channel on Delta Airlines that lasted for a couple of years, so you could tune into poetry as you were flying. My sense is it's a good thing to get poetry out of the kind of off the shelves and more into public life. Start a meeting with a poem. That would be an idea you might take with you. When you get a poem on a billboard or on the radio or on the cereal box or whatever, it happens to you so suddenly that you don't have time to deploy your anti-poetry deflector shields that were installed in high school. So let us start with the first one. It's a little poem called Budapest, and in it I reveal, or pretend to reveal, the secrets of the creative process.
Budapest. My pen moves along the page like the snout of a strange animal, shaped like a human arm, and dressed in the sleeve of a loose green sweater. I watch it sniffing the paper ceaselessly, intent as any forager that has nothing on its mind but the grubs and insects that will allow it to live another day. It wants only to be here tomorrow, dressed perhaps in the sleeve of a plaid shirt, nose pressed against the page, writing a few more dutiful lines, while I gaze out the window and imagine Budapest, or some other city where I have never been.
So, poetry can transport you. I mean, Billy Collins uses a lot of humor. I'm hoping you'll watch Billy Collins, and then you'll move on into some maybe more serious, but Billy Collins is great, and he says it with humor, and that is wonderful. And he's been very successful with that. We can move on and find that we can be transported in our minds also through all sorts of different kinds of art. And now I really want to, I'm hoping you will watch this whole production, which is up to you at the end, but I'm going to give you a snippet of the great cellist Yo-Yo Ma. He put together something called Appalachian Concert, and it was very, very well received. All sorts of artists came. Alison Krauss, the singer, James Taylor, I'm sure you're all familiar with him. They put together this beautiful concert, and Yo-Yo Ma said he wanted to do this to show not only, I mean, he mostly does Bach, of course, and classical music, but you can take the cello and you can add it to a guitar with James Taylor, and you can create something wonderful that transports us.
Thank you very much. The rather schizophrenic piece was entitled Indecision. And now we would like to bring out a very special friend of ours to sing another Stephen Foster song. This is James Taylor to sing Hard Times. Please welcome him.
I've always thought of this as a folk song, but perhaps because I learned it during the great folk scare of the mid-'60s. But I've been told by people since then that Stephen Foster is in fact the first American professional popular songwriter. He died penniless, which perhaps qualifies him for something. But the name of the song is Hard Times Come Again No More. Wishful thinking, I'm afraid, on Mr. Foster's part. Let us pause in life's pleasures to count its many tears, while we all soft sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more.
while we seek mirth and beauty in music bright and gay. There are frail forms waiting by the door. Though their voices are silent, their haunting looks will say, oh, hard times, come again no more. Tis a song that is wafted across the troubled wave. Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard time, come again no more. 'Tis a song, sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days have you lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more.
So, once again, when I'm talking about creativity and using it this way and using everything available, anything goes, anything goes. We've got a lot of creative people who may not, on first glance be your cup of tea, but if you listen a while, and then really, I find this interesting. If you understand their craft, if you understand how they put these things together, it definitely enhances your understanding, obviously, of it, but your enjoyment. So another of my favorites, like Raymond Carver, is Tom Waits. I love his singing. There's no better definition for melancholy, none, than listening to Tom Waits sing Waltzing Matilda. But Tom Waits has done a lot more than that. He also reads poetry, and you can get this online. Please explore that. The BBC has made an incredible, this is brand new, an incredible documentary about Tom Waits. So we're going to see a little bit now, and then I'm hoping the link is there that you will watch the whole documentary. He is a remarkable person. You may at first, at your first thought think, who in hell is some druggie, some drunk, with this horrible raspy voice? He more or less created this persona. I'm not saying it's not some of him, but bear in mind, he more or less created this, and it has been very successful. But Tom Waits may appear to be druggy, drunk, something, talented singer, but a little rough. But in his private life, he's maintained a marriage of almost, I think it's 50 years, to a woman he works with, brought up 3 children. So let's just say, I don't know, but off on this, he does his thing, and then he retreats in Northern California to his ranch, which is not some luxurious place, and creates. These are creative people, and they're trying to share with you. Please, if you're not into Tom Waits or you don't want that, move along. I'm just giving you here a selection of things, and I'm hoping just one or two will ring a bell, and you'll say, yeah, I'm going to pursue it. Let me see where that takes me.
Wasted and wounded, no hate what the moon did.
When he sings, he goes into that completely monstrous demon voice, like he's possessed.
Nobody writes in so many characters so effectively, gets away with it.
Can I get a hallelujah? I'm gonna stay up to the top.
And somehow he puts all that under the banner Tom Waits.
I see you in the night, on a downtown train. Every night is just the same.
How does a guy with a voice like that decide to be a singer and succeed?
Well, it was a choice between entertainment and a career in air conditioning and refrigeration.
I was just so impressed with his, stage persona, because that's what it was, really. How much of that is real? I don't know.
They say that I have no hits and I'm difficult to work with. And they say that like it's a bad thing.
16 shells from a hard sex.
It's experimental music in the context of pop music.
I think I'm drawn as much to melody as I am to dissonance. I'm always trying to cross the wires a little bit.
Do you have any philosophies about writing?
Yeah, never sleep with a girl named Ruby and never play pool with a guy named Fats.
Now you've had a little sampling, an hors d'oeuvre of what you can get. What I want to do is give you time to pursue all the references that if you scroll down you'll see. I will also send them to you in an email, so all you're going to have to do is go on and watch. But I am telling you, I'm offering you hours here, hours, and you may decide, well, I didn't like him, but I'm interested in it, and then you'll explore something else. I just want you to know how much is available. And, these are like graduate schools we can go to with what we have available to us. So I will start an email, give you a couple of days, start an email with my comments on it, and then I'm hoping, we've been very successful doing this with the film class, we'll all join in. Just remember to click, if you're going to do it on an email, reply to all, so that everybody can hear it. Unless you only want to speak to me, which is fine, and I will not forward it. But the reply to all is terrific, because everybody gets into it. I mean, we were solving a murder in the film class, so this is what I want, participation. And so in a few days, you'll be getting an email from me. So please, now, enough of me. Go, listen to these things. There's a podcast. Not only did I include Tom Waits, the BBC documentary, but there's a podcast of Terry Gross interviewing him, which I wanted to include because it's so interesting. The public persona, the private persona. Okay. Thanks so much for joining me for this. I'm very partial to these talk classes. I love them. I think they open up so much. But please, this is the YouTube. We need to do this. And you see everybody pleading on all YouTubes, not just me, Ellen, Degenerate, all these people. Click subscribe. And then next to subscribe, you have to click this little bell. They've made it hard. So you're going to click two things, subscribe, and you're going to click this little bell thing. And that means you're going to be notified when so it'll just pop up to you. Oh, it's on. Okay. And it makes it simpler for you. And we need the subscribe because YouTube needs to know that. Okay? So see you next time and do what I tell you. Okay. Bye.